The Second World War ended 3/4 of a century ago. The number of those who experience the conflict and are able to talk about it dwindles every year. Yet warfare, and the way we remember it, has the potential to create powerful stories about people and about nations, casting a long shadow.
I was born in 1960. It was 15 years after the war ended, so in relative terms, I was born quite soon after the war, in many ways.
The collective memory of sacrifice and loss was not far below the surface when Gethin Russell-Jones was growing up in South Wales. It was an era of war films and war comics, and the question of what you did in the war, or what your father did, was still potent. Gethin's answer to that question, and his attitude towards it, wasn't the same as most boys his age.
I was about 13. It was a physics lesson. This guy, Mark, was with me. And somehow or another, the conversation came round to our fathers. And his dad, I can't remember what his dad did, but he had a proper job. You know, he was worked in the fire service or something like that. And of course, my dad was a minister. And so he got really quite accusatorial about this. Well, what does your father do? And I tried to explain to him, as far as I knew, what ministers did. And of course, he poured scorn on it. And then he said, well, what did your father do in the war? And I said, well, he refused to fight because he just thought it was wrong. And at that point, he just got really verbally abusive with me, as teenage boys do. And I gave as good as I got. And we ended up in a fight.
Fighting about pacifism. Underpinned by his nonconformist Christian faith that is equally nonconformist politics, Gethin's father was a conscientious objector, a conchi. He didn't have to be. As a minister, he was exempt from conscription, but he made a point of standing before a tribunal and publicly registering his protest. You might call it an act of bravery in a time of war.
A lot of men and women, even though they registered as conscientious objectors, quite a few of them ended up as medical orderlies or ambulance drivers. But he took the view that to do anything would be complicit. I'm not doing anything. I'm not involved in this war. It's not my war. I refuse to serve it in any way.
There's a paradox about wartime messages. There are the public slogans that guided our actions and kept the war effort going. But there are also things that nobody talked about. While his father was resolute in his rejection of any direct involvement in the war, Gethin's mother spent her war years as a codebreaker at Bletchley Park. Top secret work.
It's the irony of it that my mother had a story of war. My father didn't. His story of war was of saying no. He didn't actually have a great deal to say about it, but nevertheless did say quite a lot. There was a sermon at hand, of the iniquity of war, the evil of war, and his view on the state and government and all the rest of it. And my mother did have a great deal to say, but felt she couldn't because of the Official Secrets Act. And they came at it from very different perspectives, one happy to get involved and the other not.
So this is a non-story, in a sense. A story of determined refusal. But one which says something about the complications of war and challenges our ideas about bravery and personal duty. Through his diaries and conversations before he died in 2011, Gethin had a clearer picture of his father's motivations and also of the way he was viewed by some as a shameful coward.
For many years, the family has been trying to persuade me to set down in words something about my life, which by now has entered its 92nd year. I do so with some trepidation and yet with tremendous thanksgiving to the Lord, who has saved me and led me and guided me